Okay, welcome to Thought Garden on the Air, where we explore the stories, strategies, and skills that shape the most compelling personal brands and talented professionals today. I'm your host, Alexis Quintal, CEO and owner of Rosarium, a personal branding and public relations firm dedicated to helping entrepreneurs, business leaders, and influencers monetize and elevate their personal brands to achieve their goals. So, for season two, we're thrilled to expand our focus beyond authors and into the broader world of personal branding and talent management. So, whether you're an entrepreneur, an influencer, or an expert building your unique narrative, we're here to amplify your voice. Today, we have a great guest, Marcia Alvarado, a speaker, a model, an entrepreneur. Her work is deeply rooted in empowering individuals to embrace their authenticity and thrive in all areas of life. Through the Alvarado Experience, she inspires others to live unapologetically and pursue their unique paths with confidence. Welcome, Marcia.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun.
Yeah, so I'm excited to dive in. Like, what inspired the Alvarado Experience, and what's your journey been like as a speaker, a model, an entrepreneur? You're wearing all these hats, so
Mhm.
just want to know more about that.
Well, in any journey, there's always steps along the way that you start acquiring more hats, right? So you don't
Yeah.
get born with 10 hats. But I think my journey started very young. I was very, you know, at a very young age, I always knew that I wanted to build buildings. And I wanted to be part of, from 3 years old, right? I was standing on the London Bridge. My mom was in the Air Force, so we moved around a lot. We were stationed in England, and I was like 3 years old and proclaimed on a bridge like that I want to build buildings one day. And so,
Aw.
ironically, I've been on a one-track mind, like tunnel vision, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, when I was a kid, I played with Legos, and I wanted to like be the bricklayer and be the one that actually
Hmm.
physically built it out in the field. To the point where I got into school, and I was taking a lot of math and science, and I kind of realized that I can be the engineer that designs it, right?
Hmm.
And so it kind of evolved into focusing on being, an engineer that designs buildings. And so for the past
Very
20
cool.
years, that's what I've been doing.
Yeah.
So that was like, hard hat number one, right? And then about 10 years ago, oh gosh, maybe now 12 years ago, I had always, you know, I started my career in New York City. And so in New York City, you got to see a lot of different types of people operating in a lot of different types of spaces, industries.
Mm.
But there was a lot of people that were very much unapologetically themselves within
Mhm.
that very dense population, right? You got the people that are obviously, moving through the motions, but then you got so many diverse amount of people. So when you start your career in that environment, you almost feel like you're just finding like all of your mentors and all of your inspiration like every single day when you walk down the streets of New York. So you're
Yeah.
constantly immersed in
Yeah.
diversity, in opportunities, in terms of how you want to present yourself, what things are aligned with you, what things motivate you, what things inspire you. So I think your environment is a big place of exposure, right? If you grew up in a small
Mhm.
town in Indiana, your exposure is limited, right?
Right.
And so even though I was in the my family was in the military, moved around a lot of different spaces. I was always around a lot of diversity, but I wasn't around this cultural diversity of like I had the military culture, but not like the culture of
Mm.
everything else. And so the civilian world, finishing college, that really led to this opportunity of finding myself a lot faster,
Mhm.
maybe than other people. And so I wore menswear. I got a second job. I was working as an engineer, but I got a second job at Banana Republic at the men's store. So I was helping gentlemen with suits all day. And that just started
Oh.
lending into the self of like being really self confident about knowing what looks good on gentlemen, um,
Mhm.
clothing, how to fit their body shape. And so by 21, 22 years old, I was helping, grown men getting wedding suits. And so that's where that styling component of finding myself, what style I like, and then helping others started. And
Hmm.
through
Okay.
time, so that styling hat kind of came on, and I was very
Yeah.
in terms of just doing it for myself and then doing it as a job, right? Not really helping others in from an empowerment perspective.
Mhm.
But when I got into modeling, the reason why I decided to do that was because I was like, well, everybody sees me out in the world as a male, which from a presentation, gender presentation, that was okay for me. I identify as female, but they were inspired by the style. They were inspired by the looks and how well I wore the suits. And so that's where I was like,
Yeah.
well, that's what a model does in the fashion industry, is inspire
Yeah.
whatever it is you're wearing, whether it's male or female clothing, and force you to buy, right? Like they're like, oh,
Mhm.
I want that suit because Marcia rocked it.
Yeah.
That's a great looking suit. So regardless on who's wearing it and what your gender is, it's still an inspiration. And so I was like, well, shoot,
Mm.
everybody sees me out in the world, um, and most people that don't know me will assume that I'm a gentleman. About 50-50%, right? And I was like, well, it doesn't matter. I was like, if I have good style and people like it, maybe I can make some money off of it. So that's when I
Mhm.
decided to be a male model. And I was
Okay.
go down the male modeling track, right? So this concept of androgynous modeling was kind of always like synonymous to maybe celebrities and certain things, but it wasn't really in mainstream media yet, right? Uh,
Yeah.
in early like 2013, 2012. And so I was just like, well, I'm gonna go to castings as a male model. I'm gonna go to this, and so I built a portfolio around being a male model. And the first time I was in front of the camera, it really did uh, surprise me because I thought I was really comfortable in myself. And
Mhm.
then I opened up, got in front of the camera, and realized I had so many other layers that I had to work on. And it
Mm.
was very challenging to exude emotion on command. And at the
Yeah.
end of that first photo shoot, I realized, holy crap, forget about any extra clothes or making some extra money. I was like, this is a talent and a skill that can be used not just in modeling, but in life and in business, right? And building relationships. And so
Right.
that's how the Alvarado Experience was really born.
Mm.
So the modeling hat came on, built out a website just for modeling. Obviously, it's evolved from a modeling website to a fashion and architecture blog, and now a business for speaking and business consulting and image consulting. And so it's just transformed in the way that whatever the universe needs it to be. And I think that's been the
Mm.
best way I can explain how it's kind of evolved, right? Um,
Yeah.
the speaking part came in because I worked with a custom suiting brand company for many years, and I was doing a lot of the marketing and PR,
Mhm.
do on behalf of the brand. And so I was responding to requests from like BuzzFeed and all these different things. And so they started having conversations about diversity and inclusion and what does it mean to wear genderless clothing and what does it mean for a suit to fit a woman versus a man, is it male, is it female, like all these concepts started like molding around in the fashion world. And so I had to communicate that in a very eloquent way. And
Mm.
I went back to school to get a certificate at Cornell University for diversity and inclusion to understand the language and how I could use it in
Mm.
the corporate world. And
Right.
that's how I kind of molded into being more of a visible advocate, obviously as a model, but more of a vocal advocate for just bringing yourself to work and in the corporate world of construction and engineering, and being able to help people be the okay with everything that they are, and then using that
Mhm.
to your advantage as an innovator, right?
Yeah.
As a company that is bringing in these very unique people and letting them expand and grow in a way that will be fruitful for them and for the individual. And so that's where the
Right.
speaking kind of part started to mold into this idea. Um, and then I just did a lot more research, and I found a couple coaches in speaking, and so it's just
Yeah.
the speaking hat started to come naturally, and it's very easy for me to share. And I think that was and
Yeah.
share in front of many people. Obviously, I'm talking to you right now, but like being able to get in front of a crowd and speak reminds me of when I played college basketball, and you're literally
Mhm.
front and center, everybody's looking at you. So I've been in
Oh,
those
yeah.
situations before, and so that's where doing runway, same thing. Everybody's looking at you.
Mhm. Yeah,
There's
you're used to high pressure situations, so
yeah,
speaking is
it's funny when you say pressure. It's funny. It's not as much pressure as knowing that they're like, if you don't do it, you're going to lose an opportunity to impact the world.
mm, I
And
like that.
so it's kind of like the game's on the line, the ball's in your hands. I was a shooting guard, so I was always willing to like win the game or lose the game in the last second, right? I wanted to be the
Right.
Michael Jordan, right? I was like, so is like you get in that moment and it's like you can either, push through it and be okay to lose, be okay to fail. But knowing if you succeed, you're going to help change somebody's mind. You're going to motivate somebody. You're going to inspire somebody. You're going to leave a lasting
Mm,
impression. That's much more, I'm so aware of the impact that is actually happening. So that forces me to keep going and going, going. When I speak in
right.
front of a crowd, I am nervous. My knees are probably even actually shaking, but will notice it. And that's the best part because if
Yeah,
it's really
right.
obvious, then it would be kind of like, it would make the crowd feel uncomfortable. But
Yeah. But
so
it's
that's
sometimes
why I
it's good to
love
show a little bit of that.
and so now you see, as an entrepreneur now, not working for an actual corporate, company anymore, like
Mm,
that is the newest journey now.
yeah,
I'd done all of these other things while I was working full time. And so within the
right.
last 6 months now this new entrepreneurship hat has come on and it's a journey. I mean, when you
Mhm,
have the stability of a corporate job, you feel a little bit more, comfortable spending a little bit more money
mhm,
here and doing this and doing that. And but I think, you know, not being part of the day job anymore has really helped me to get more deep into the creative side of what is
right.
this gonna really like the thinking part of what is it that you want to do. It's really hard to think when you have like a full-time job taking up a lot of mental capacity.
Yeah,
And it
right,
takes
exactly.
practice, right? You got to practice it, and you go on the I've been on these roller coasters of really inspired, low inspired, really inspired, really
Mhm,
motivated. So it's always been the last 10 years has been kind of like, up and down,
mhm.
but I've learned the entire time and I've built on top of things. I go back and look at everything that's happened and I'm like, oh, what have I done?
Yeah,
So it is inspiring knowing that it was possible. But now it's like, okay, what is the next 10 years going to look
mhm. Yeah, I love how you kind of started off by sharing how ever since you were a kid, you wanted to be a builder, but now you're still a builder. You're still building and building,
I'm
as
still
you go.
sitting here.
It
I'm
never
still
ends.
sitting here. I still have a license in 6 states, 5 states. I'm
Mhm.
still practicing part time, for a certain type of client, for handful of clients.
Yeah. Yeah,
Credibility doesn't
so
go away. You kind of, you want to keep that trade.
mhm.
I help sell, for companies now. So, in the business development world, I work part time to help sell and bring partnerships and relationships together for people to win projects, whether it's on the construction side, an architectural side, engineering side. And I just used
Okay.
network to help build other brands.
Right, those relationships are key.
Mhm.
So, at Rosarium, our specialty is personal branding, and we've talked a little bit too about like your personal brand, but I'm curious how you've seen from going from like the corporate world to now being your own business owner, like how has your personal brand evolved with that and where do you see it going next?
So it's funny. So when you meet a new relationship, in my corporate side, the work has to speak for itself, right?
Mhm,
So the work of engineering, I had to prove yourself that you're one a good engineer,
mhm.
you're a good communicator, you're here to help solve problems every single day, every minute of the day, and so that relationship grows into a point where you build trust with a client, and when that
Yeah,
trust gets solidified there's opportunity for more exposure, right? So now they're going to get, oh, wait, you do modeling? Oh, wait, you do some other things? Oh, how did you get?
right, right.
And so the conversation
Build
can,
that trust first.
over time, this is,
Mhm.
6 months, a year, you work with somebody on a project. And so they get to learn more about you. I started an Instagram literally when I decided to be a model. I did not have
Yeah.
it, didn't use it. People started telling me to take pictures of myself, and I thought that was really weird because I wasn't a very big selfie person. So the Instagram and social media world on that side became much more modeling and fashion focused.
Yeah,
And my relationships got built, in the professional world on LinkedIn.
yeah.
And I kind of kept it very separate. It was very much
Mhm.
of like, yes, I'm an engineer. This is my, all my relationships. Now, would relationships spill over into the Instagram world and like, oh, I found you on Instagram or follow me on Instagram? Yes, that would happen. But I
Mm.
never really married the two ideas together. People only got to see it together when they saw me in person, right?
Right, right.
It was, me dressed up in a suit at a networking event. Oh man, I really like that shirt. I really like that tie, or I love the, the pocket square with this. I would get compliments in that way. So that's how they would get the exposure. And I would communicate about things that I'm doing. Oh, I'm going to be in a fashion show, or I'm going to be this. And then they would, they would have the opportunity to get exposure to more of the brand. But it
Mhm.
wasn't something that I
Okay.
was giving it to them like right out of the gate. Because I
Right.
had this sense of like how much I'm representing an organization, a firm, how much are they comfortable, of me being my whole self all over LinkedIn and when I'm like have the company's name underneath my tagline, right?
Right.
That's been the
Right.
difference. Now that
Okay.
I'm on my own, I'm starting to bring Instagram and the stories behind where I've been, what I've done
Mhm.
in LinkedIn in a way to expose people more to about my personal brand. And it's been very
Good.
well received. I've gotten
Yeah.
a lot of great engagement. We just recently got a certification from the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce as an
Okay.
LGBTE certified company. So,
Okay.
if organizations hire the Alvarado Experience for speaking, business consulting, image consulting, that can be utilized as a minority partnership um,
Yeah.
or
That's amazing.
any type of metrics that they want to use it for. So,
Right.
but yeah, now I get to
Um,
merge kind of like both together, and it's still a
right.
journey of what that looks like and how much, not necessarily how much, but what things are going to be the most impactful, right? And so
Right.
I'm in like a testing mode of like what goes well, which one
Mhm.
are attractive, and I think that's a very unique part of the personal branding because the people that have known me for many years are aware of this, and now they're seeing all of this in a different platform, and I think it's exciting for the people that know me, and then it's intriguing of what people will be attracted to it going forward.
Right. Yeah, no, I can agree on the testing and learning. I'm always testing out, like, different types of content, pushing the limits a little bit on LinkedIn to more
Mhm.
personal content, day in the life, behind the scenes, the not
I think one of the first videos I
perfected.
one of the first videos I ever watched of you after we met in person was a day in the life that you did like as an entrepreneur, and you were like at the gym in
Yeah.
the morning, and then like
Yeah.
get your coffee, and then
Yeah, and
so
people
yeah.
appreciated that because 'cause they're like, "Wow, it shows, like, what you do outside of work," because if every post is just about, like, business, it just kinda gets mundane, and no one really feels like they know you, but maybe they can relate to my morning workouts or, maybe we go to the same gym or, opens up those conversations, so that's why I love the personal branding piece.
And it's a very vulnerable space, and I think that's why
Mhm.
it's not a lot of people do it, right? There's not like, it's not like
Yeah.
entrepreneurship is very unique, but being an influencer, that's where it's like if you're doing both together, like that's a very vulnerable space. And I think
Oh,
not enough
yeah.
people talk about it, right?
Yeah,
People have to know
you're
that
opening.
this has been a journey of myself, I've been around for about 42 years now. Like it didn't just happen, I wasn't born with this skill set. I was a
Mhm.
very quiet child.
Mm.
Ironically, no one can believe it. It wasn't until I got out
Yeah.
of school that I started speaking up for myself and asking questions. So
Yeah.
for 15 years, I was very like just the one in the room. I was much
Mhm.
more of a performer, like on the basketball court and in the classroom. I performed, but I was never vocal about it.
Right, right,
So this has grown into what you see now, right?
right.
For now, I'm like the one always talking.
Yeah, I love that.
So
Yeah, no, it's interesting to hear people's backgrounds. A lot of times it's not what you would expect, but good to share because, like I said, a lot of people can relate to that. And, I did wanna ask too, I mean, you seem like someone who's very confident and, very comfortable with who you are, but have you had moments of self-doubt and, how do you overcome that? Maybe this would inspire someone else who's
so
experiencing that.
self doubt is a very interesting thing. I believe that
Mhm,
you can be comfortable with who you are in certain aspects of your life, but there are
mhm.
always going to be people out there in the world that will doubt you. There will always be experiences of self doubt all the
Yeah.
time.
Oh, yeah.
I've experienced it in a much more one incident very standout was in college, and I had this amazing opportunity to play Division I basketball at the
Mm,
University of Louisville. And I'm 17 years old. I'm driving to Kentucky in a 1996 Ford Escort. Barely made it there, and like had this experience of playing at a very high level huge school where you're like one of 200 people in your calculus class, right? Like just
Wow.
big university, big and I did well, but I didn't do good enough, right? And so I got placed at a junior college for a year to build up my skill set so that I could come
Okay.
back to the university and be part of the dynamic, right? Be part of the rotation, right, of playing on the team. And so I didn't really have a choice in the matter, right? It was kind of like this is what's going to happen. And they've already
Mhm.
placed me. They already talked to the coach. They already got me in. And so I had this, not to go into too much detail, but like there was a real situation where I felt like you did everything you could to get to the
Mhm.
point, and then now you're like to get your dream, and now it's like, oh, by the way, you're not good enough. And that was
Mm.
a huge impact that I'm still probably dealing with to this day. Because
Wow.
after that, I struggled and struggled. I think I struggled with dealing with it as much as more just moving forward, right? So my
Mhm.
coping mechanism at the time was just I don't know how to deal with this, so I'm just going to wake up tomorrow and go to class and go play basketball and finish my degree and
Yeah.
just keep going, going,
Yeah.
going. And
Just keep busy, keep going. Yeah.
which inherently has become a coping mechanism in everything that I do, right? When there's loss
Yeah.
in my life, when there's trauma, like I just keep moving forward. And sometimes that's not good,
Exactly.
right? Sometimes you need to
No.
stop,
But you
right?
don't want to stop and feel.
Right, right, exactly. And I think when it comes to self-doubt, I have gone back to therapy many times, and I use it as a constant form of mental health in my life, and I've recognized, wow, there's things that I never dealt with. And so
Mm.
and the self-doubt of as an engineer, like working in engineering is a very, you have to be right and you have to be fast. That's the difference
Okay.
between who's working as an engineer and someone, who just keeps pushing the can down the road. And so sometimes I'm not as fast.
Yeah.
So I had doubts in myself at every step of the way. Every step of all the things that I've talked about, there's always been doubt.
Mm.
Uh, that is a personal journey. And I think that right now in my life, I've learned that the self doubt will always be there. The question is,
Yeah.
how are you going to sit in that, and how are you going to think
Mm.
about how are you going to move forward, but much more intentionally, where you can build that self confidence over and over again. It's not something that's going to go away. It's always going to be there. So how I react to it now is much different. I don't
Mhm.
just ignore it and keep going. I try to sit in
Right.
that. I would say the
Okay.
last 6 years, I think post COVID really
Yeah.
forced me to sit in my
Well, it
house
kind of forced us to.
to
No
stop
other choice.
and be like, take a moment, take a break. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
coming out of COVID, my work life balance got a lot better, being able to be safe in my own space, like with just myself, not around people.
Mhm.
Because before
Mhm.
COVID, if I wasn't around people, then I was like, I had to be around people and networking and do this and do
Me
that.
too. Yeah.
I never let myself sit by alone.
Yeah.
So that's been the difference. So I think, the self doubt and what I'm doing now, like I'm like flying by the seat of my pants right now as a new entrepreneur
Mhm.
and figuring out how
Yeah.
to record and make podcasts and like do my website and build out
Right.
marketing content. Like, you're the every department when you first start out, and
Literally, yeah.
I've never
The
paid
janitor,
I've
the
never paid attention
HR.
to like 3% processing fees in my life until I did
I
like this
know.
research day of like, how do I get more of my money that people are giving me?
Seriously, it's ridiculous.
So
Welcome.
so yeah,
I love
it's
that.
but yeah, I think the way that I've overcome it is I don't think it's much of as overcoming it as much as feeling it and sitting in it and knowing that it will always be there. And yes, you're
Mhm.
gonna if some people get stuck and they quit, like they don't move forward, that's something that
Yeah.
I haven't really dealt with. So
Yeah.
I don't have a relatable conversation to that. But I've always felt like the thing that keeps moving me forward and when I wake up every day is knowing that I'm making an impact. And I've seen the
Right.
impact over time in many people's
Right.
lives. So that's always been the thing that forces me to keep going in some capacity. It may not be the way that I wanted it to go, but it's keep moving forward in some capacity. So
Yeah. I mean, I think that is a step to overcoming it. Like you said, I mean,
yeah.
part of it is just sitting with it, dealing with it, and before you just move on and completely ignore that it even happened, all part
Yeah.
of the process.
And I think,
And then what about
go ahead.
well, I was gonna ask too, when it comes to like really stepping into your authentic self, I think
Mhm.
you're a really good role model for that. So do you have any advice on how someone who's like struggling with that or what that even means, like how they can really
Yeah,
step
I think
into who they are?
authenticity is a word that a lot of people can use, and it's so interesting. I think this is one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to build out, my keynote about authentic vitality, because it's
Mm,
this concept of an operating system that you build within yourself that moves you through the passions that you have, how to access the energy, right? Like I think that's always been my special sauce is I can always create my own energy, but like
yeah,
I've done dig and like how do you do that? What does that look like? Well, why is that even
right.
um and then how you activate it out in the world, right? How do you make it unique? How do you take the things that you love and the energy that you have and give it out to other people? And it doesn't mean that you're an entrepreneur. I mean, you could be a manager, a leader in the company. You could be managing, you know, you could be an inspiration for others
Mhm,
without a leadership role, right? But
right.
this authenticity piece has always been something that's been very interesting about what makes it authentic, what
Right.
makes an individual authentic. And so I think a lot of what I'm trying to do is educate people that every single person is unique in their own way and to get
Yeah,
to realize it from the inside. So it's like
right.
the step by step process. It's not a learned behavior. It's not oh, you have this personality, so you can be authentic. No, it's you understanding who you are internally.
Mhm.
And
Mm,
a lot of who you are is what you've been exposed to. And a lot of what you've been exposed to has been the basis of sometimes your environment, which you may have control or you may not have control. But being
right.
aware of every single thing that you have been exposed to and every decision that you've made or why you made that decision the way you did, what to take that job or to go to that school or to move out of your house, at a young age or just everything that you have, that's your unique story. And
Right.
you've made decisions and you've had reactions to different things that have shaped who you are. Now who you are and where you want to go could be two completely different things, and that's
Yeah.
where sometimes you can hear some of the success stories of people that have come from hardship and have figured out a way to become a billionaire,
Yeah.
because it's an understanding the mindset of where you want to go, but recognizing what recognizing what how you got there, and
Right.
that's a big piece of like everything. So
Right.
can you hit pause for a second?
Yeah. Well, I can't hit pause, but I'll just tell my editor
I
to
need to
pause.
plug my laptop in.
Oh no. Okay.
I just realized it wasn't plugged in.
You're good.
I'm so happy this isn't live.
Yeah, no. That's why I don't do live. I'm doing one on Friday. I'm like, "Oh gosh, like I have
I,
huskies. I don't know if you know what my
I
life
wasn't
is like over here."
I wasn't a live one last Friday, and it had some issues in the beginning, but it was good. Um, it was good. So okay, sorry. Um,
No problem.
yeah, I think I finished that thought. So
Yeah, I think you did. Yeah, so I was actually gonna ask too, so what's next for the Alvarado Experience? Are there any upcoming, like, projects or initiatives you're excited to share?
so yeah, so because the Alvarado Experience is now being promoted as a business, consulting and speak and keynote speaking like
Mhm,
opportunity. I think
mhm.
the last 6 months have been a real talking to different partnerships and talking to different people and really figuring out what the message is going to be and how I want to deliver that. And so I think the Alvarado Experience now is the work of it is really exposing it to as many platforms as I possibly can.
Yeah,
And through those processes you start to shape what things people are what is resonating with the audience, right? Because what I
mhm,
think may be the most important thing may not be, right? And I'll give you an example. I've been building out a coaching program for young
okay.
design professionals. So
Hmm,
anybody in the the AEC industry, architecture, engineering, construction, that 0 to like 10 years So maybe prior to getting their license, maybe prior to being a project manager or a senior leader in a company, um, giving them a lot of the tools that they need to bring their authentic selves and to learn how to grow their network and become a
Mm-hmm.
seller of themselves, even though they're a technical
Mm.
professional, right?
Yeah,
Because
I
that
love that.
is that I've always found, like, when I was first starting out in New York, there was a gentleman had a really nice office. I'm in a cubicle, right? Entry level engineer,
Right.
and this guy had this really nice office. And some of my engineering colleagues were telling me, all you need to do is get your professional engineering license. That's all you need to do. And I was like,
Hmm.
okay. So in 4 years, you take the exam, you get your license, and then you're good for life. I was like, so then I walked around and I saw these offices, and everybody in the office has a master's degree in something.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
whether it be in engineering or in business or something. And I was like, okay, well, I understand getting the license is number one. Oh, you don't need the master's to get the license. I'm like, okay, but everybody who has an office has a master's degree, which means they've
Right.
educated themselves to a certain level. So that
Right.
really stuck with me. And that's why I went back to school a few years later, because I thought, like, having a master's degree, not saying that the piece of paper is going to get me a job or whatever, but it just shows that you're willing to invest in yourself,
True.
right? You don't need
Yeah.
it. It's not required to be a professional engineer. You can use it to help build out, years of experience to some capacity, but it made an impact, and that's where I was like, okay. So a lot of what I want to show these young people in the coaching program is how to build that personal brand, how to dive into
Yeah.
their authentic self now, so that when they're ready to be a leader or they're growing, their leadership skills, I feel like it's always important to do it on day one. And
Hmm.
every team that I've ever worked with, every young person or just colleagues, I've always shared this. Like, you gotta, like, invest in yourself. And so that's what I want.
Right.
So in that
I love
offering,
that.
I was like, great, I'm going to launch this coaching program. I started helping another CEO with her brand. And she was like,
Okay.
and I met up with her so she could review my coaching program, like, to give me feedback. And so we were
Right. Yeah.
talking, and she's like, I need help with my personal brand. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
well, yeah, let's talk about it. And then through the handful of conversations, she's like, you should be doing this for the C-suite people. She's like, not
Yeah.
to say that you can't offer it, but this is where I need help. And I didn't even realize what I needed help with, right?
Right. Right.
About thought leaders that are already in management, already at that corporate level.
Hmm.
So in my imposter syndrome, I'm thinking, oh, let me help the young people, right? Just,
Yeah.
maybe that'll work out, and not realizing the skills that I had to help someone already at a C-suite level.
Right.
So that's a concept of what's going to merge into executive coaching and, like, helping
Okay.
C-suite level, help individuals with all the things they're a part of, and how to, you know, help with their personal brand, and
Yeah.
how to be a thought leader. Like, what things do they talk
Yeah.
about? What things should they share
Right.
to help build relationships and help their business?
Right.
You know?
I love that.
And then the other thing that I'm very focused on is video, which is why I'm excited to be
Mm.
on the podcast. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so making sure that I am constantly in front of video and some form of content to generate, because I think
Right.
that's the one thing that I've lacked over the last 4 or 5 years is I've never embraced the video aspect. I love
Hmm.
photography, I love runway and
True.
printed images, and that has
Yeah.
sparked creativity. And as a creative director for my own work, a lot of times I love creating a story on paper. Like, I think that's the
Mm.
most challenging thing to do, to have one image that is taken.
Right. Tell a story.
Like, you're like, what's this movie I want to watch, right? You get inspired by
Mm.
just a photo. Video
True.
obviously is much more engaging, and so
Yeah.
I'm working on it, making sure
Well,
that everything
perfect.
is recorded and
Yeah.
put out there. So
So where can our listeners connect with you if they want to see some of your video or maybe some of your modeling
yeah,
photography?
so all on my social media handle is the Alvarado exp for Instagram, for Facebook. Um, those are the ones I pretty much use right now. Obviously,
Okay.
LinkedIn under my name, um, and the Alvarado Experience is just what it is, the website. So
Okay.
www.thealvaradoexperience.com. It talks
Perfect.
a little bit about my new keynote that I'll be
Okay.
presenting and business consulting. So anything from business development consulting to marketing. That's where the C-suite executive coaching will be held under. And then the image consulting and
Mm.
styling. So I've created a way where obviously as a leader you want to present yourself, and so sometimes just taking somebody shopping for a new tuxedo that they're going to
Yeah.
a gala. Um,
Yeah.
it's a part of the business, right? Especially for the
Right.
sweet people that may not have that fashion edge sense or feel uncomfortable trying to present themselves in that way. Having somebody by their side, knowing like, hey, you're going to help me with my personal brand as a leader, and make sure that
Mhm.
maybe I look good in in a certain environment, which is all kind of
Right.
related to like public relations, right? Like you want to be able
Yeah.
to.
It's your public perception, right? How you show up in the world, what impression you give. It's all under the same umbrella.
Yeah, and understanding who they are as an authentic person, like when you build that partnership and that relationship, that's where it becomes very easy for them to ask. I
Yeah.
think people have a hard time asking for help, and so that's where the relationships that I've cultivated. I'm hoping that people will be more willing to ask what they need based on
Mm.
the essence of the partnership that I've built. So,
Yeah.
and that's I
Well,
think
amazing.
the future is
Yeah.
showing the videos, showing more of my messaging will help build those partnerships faster for the people um, that I don't know yet.
Exactly. Right. Warming up those relationships.
Mhm.
Yeah. We'll put all of the links and everything in the show notes. So thank you so much for sharing and for joining today.
Thank you.
So with that, we conclude another episode of the Thought Garden. So if you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to follow us on Spotify, YouTube, and social media for more inspiring stories and actionable insights. And if you have a story to share or know someone who does, you can reach out to us at rosarium.work on social media or on our website. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on the Thought Garden.
Nice.